Have you ever wondered why your deepest wounds came from the people who were supposed to love you the most? Why the first place you felt misunderstood was inside your own home, long before the world had a chance to shape you, and why even as a child you sensed something was off, as if your soul had been dropped into a family whose language you could never fully speak. It is a strange and silent confusion. To love your family yet feel unseen by them, to depend on them, yet feel emotionally unsafe. To grow up surrounded by people, yet feel profoundly alone. And maybe you've asked yourself in the quiet moments, why was I born into this? Why into chaos? Why into conflict? Why into people who never knew how to hold your sensitivity? Why into voices that yelled instead of listened, punished instead of understood, blamed instead of healed? There are souls who awaken early, not because they choose to, but because their environment leaves them no other choice. Awakening is rarely born from ease, it is born from friction, from emotional turbulence, from the feeling of being the observer in a home where everyone else is asleep. You learned to read energy before you could read words. You sensed tension before you understood its cause. You felt emotions that weren't yours because no one around you knew how to process their own. As a child, you weren't just growing, you were awakening. Your family, often unknowingly, became your first spiritual teachers, not through wisdom, but through wounds. And the strange part is this: the most spiritually awake souls often come through the most difficult families, not because they deserve pain, but because the soul's evolution requires contrast. Darkness teaches you to seek light. Chaos teaches you to value peace. Pain teaches you to feel deeply. And emotional neglect teaches you to become conscious of what others unconsciously pass down. The human part of you still wonders, why did they hurt me? Why couldn't they love me the way I needed to be loved? You weren't asking for perfection. You were asking for presence. You were asking for understanding. You were asking for softness in a world that felt too sharp. And perhaps the most painful truth is this: your family didn't hurt you because of who you were. They hurt you because of who they couldn't be. They were operating from their own wounds, repeating patterns they inherited, playing roles they never questioned. You arrived awake in a lineage that had been sleeping for generations. So the curiosity begins to unfold. What if your soul chose this? What if the pain you were born into was the catalyst for your awakening? What if your family was the beginning of your spiritual path, not despite their dysfunction, but because of it? This is where the story starts, with a child who felt too conscious for their environment, too sensitive for their home, too awake for a family that did not yet have the tools to understand the depth they brought into the world. Number one, the vibration mismatch. From the very beginning, there is a vibration inside you, subtle, quiet, ancient, that does not match the energy of the home you were born into. You can feel it even before you understand it. Your family speaks in one frequency while your soul pulses in another. They move through life unconsciously, reacting, repeating, surviving, while you observe, absorb, question, and feel. It is not arrogance. It is not superiority. It is simply a difference in awareness, a difference that becomes the root of your earliest emotional pain. Have you noticed how some children seem to carry an older presence? How they watch instead of rush, listen instead of interrupt, feel instead of numb? That was you, not because you were wiser, but because your soul was quieter, attuned to subtlety in a home that lived loudly. You sensed the unspoken tensions, the suppressed emotions, the moods that shifted like weather. You recognized the pain beneath your parents' anger, the fear behind their rules, the wounds beneath their words. While others ignored the emotional undercurrents, you were drowning in them. Your family lived from their conditioning. You lived from your awareness. This mismatch created an invisible wall long before you could name it. They needed you to follow their ways, but your spirit resisted. They needed you to conform, but your essence questioned. They wanted you to fit their narrative, but your consciousness was writing its own. And without realizing it, you became the contrast in their lives, the reminder of what they hadn't healed, hadn't faced, hadn't awakened to. Awakened souls often trigger discomfort in unconscious families, not because they misbehave, but because their presence exposes what others avoid. Your sensitivity made them uncomfortable. Your questions made them defensive. Your empathy made them confront emotions they had buried. Your depth reminded them of their own numbness. And instead of meeting you with understanding, they often responded with frustration, dismissal, or control. It wasn't personal, it was vibrational. When two frequencies clash, tension forms. And in families, that tension becomes emotional conflict. You were growing in awareness in a place where emotional survival was prioritized over emotional truth. Your soul was tuned to presence in a home, tuned to patterns. Your inner light was emerging in a lineage accustomed to shadow. It is painful, deeply painful, to recognize that you were the different one, not because something was wrong with you, but because something was waking within you. The vibration mismatch meant you often felt like the outsider in your own home. You questioned what no one else questioned. You felt what no one else acknowledged. You saw what others preferred to ignore. And because you sensed so much, you carried burdens that were never yours to hold. This mismatch is not a flaw. It is a sign that your soul came through this family to break the pattern, not to blend into it. A sign that your awakening began long before you had language for it. A sign that you were never meant to become like them. You were meant to evolve beyond what they could spiritually offer. And though this mismatch hurt you, it also shaped the clarity that now defines your awakening. Number 2, breaking the ancestral pattern. There comes a moment in every awakened soul's life when a quiet truth begins to reveal itself. The pain you were born into did not begin with you. It is older than your childhood, older than your parents, older than the walls you grew up within. It is a pattern, a wound, a looping story passed down through generations, carried unconsciously from one soul to the next, and without realizing it, you became the one born to break it. Have you ever looked at your family and felt the weight of something ancient behind their behavior? The anger that doesn't belong to the present moment, the fear that echoes from a time they never talk about, the insecurity shaped by someone else's voice long before they ever had their own. Their pain did not start with them. They inherited it, and unintentionally they handed pieces of it to you. It is a strange, almost sacred role to be the one who sees clearly in a lineage that has only ever survived through blindness. You begin to notice behaviors they justify but never question. You see emotional wounds they normalize but never heal. You feel the heaviness they carry but refuse to acknowledge. And somewhere deep within, a part of you whispers, "This ends with me." Breaking ancestral patterns is not loud, it is not dramatic. It begins in silence, in those private moments where you choose awareness over repetition, reflection over reaction, truth over comfort. It begins when you stop passing down the same emotional inheritance you received, when you refuse to shrink yourself to fit the family dynamic, when you choose to heal instead of hurt, to feel instead of numb, to question instead of obey. Your family may not understand this shift. In fact, awakening within a lineage that has never known awakening often makes you the strange one, the sensitive one, the difficult one, or even the problem. But this misunderstanding is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that you are different, not for the sake of rebellion, but for the sake of evolution. Generational healing always begins with the one who feels out of place. You break the cycle simply by refusing to continue it, by choosing compassion where they chose defensiveness, by choosing clarity where they chose silence. by choosing presence where they chose distraction. Your awakening forces a confrontation with everything your family avoided, and this confrontation is not punishment, it is purpose. You were not born into a difficult family because your soul needed to suffer. You were born there because your soul was strong enough to transform the suffering. You are the one who dares to face what they feared. You are the one who feels emotions they suppressed. You are the one who questions patterns they obeyed. You are the one who becomes conscious of pain they normalized. And in doing so, you begin a shift that ripples backward and forward, healing generations behind you and preventing harm for those who will come after you. This is the quiet burden and the sacred privilege of the awakened soul to end what began long before you and to create a new path for those who will follow. Number 3, the purpose of the pain. There comes a moment in your awakening when you begin to look back, not with resentment, but with a strange and trembling clarity. You start to see your childhood pain not just as a wound, but as a teacher, not as punishment, but as initiation. And for the first time, you begin to understand that the suffering you endured inside your family was not meaningless. It was shaping you, stretching you, refining you into someone capable of depth, awareness, and compassion. No ordinary upbringing could have produced. It is one of the hardest truths to accept. The pain had a purpose, not a purpose that justifies it, for trauma is never justified, but a purpose that transforms it. Have you noticed how the people who grew up in peaceful, emotionally mature homes often don't seek awakening? They don't question the nature of existence. They don't explore the inner world. They don't look for deeper meaning. Comfort rarely sends anyone inward. Stability rarely pushes anyone into introspection. It is suffering, especially early suffering, that cracks the shell of the ego and forces consciousness to emerge. Your family's dysfunction pushed you inward when others were going outward. Their chaos made you search for inner peace long before adulthood. Their emotional absence made you build a relationship with yourself. Their inconsistency taught you the importance of awareness. You were learning the foundations of awakening before you even knew what awakening was. And perhaps this is the most profound realization. Awakening is not an escape from your childhood. It is the evolution of it. The pain you experienced became the soil in which your spiritual sensitivity grew. Your sensitivity became the doorway through which awareness entered. And awareness became the compass that guided you out of the life you were given into the life you were meant to create. The purpose of your suffering was never to break you. It was to awaken you. Without that pain, you might have become unconscious too. You might have repeated the same patterns. You might have inherited the same emotional blindness. You might have lived a life that looked fine on the surface but felt empty underneath. Instead, your suffering carved space within you, space for compassion, for wisdom, for insight, for depth. Pain became the sculptor. Awareness became the sculpture. And yet the human part of you still mourns. It mourns the childhood you should have had, the safety. You deserved the love that was never given in the way you needed. That mourning is valid. Awakening does not erase grief. It transforms it. It turns grief into understanding, understanding into clarity, and clarity into freedom. The purpose of the pain is not to idolize your wounds, but to liberate you from them, to show you how to rise above the unconsciousness you were born into, to teach you how to love consciously when your family loved unconsciously, to help you create the life that they could never model, but that you now have the awareness to build. Your pain shaped your awakening, and your awakening is what transforms your pain into something meaningful, not something deserved, but something transcended. And now, as you stand in the quiet space between who you were and who you are becoming, something soft and profound begins to settle inside you. You start to see your life with a wider lens, not from the narrow view of the wounded child, nor from the confusion of the awakening adult, but from the calm, spacious awareness of your spirit. And from this vantage point, Your family no longer appears as villains in your story, but as characters playing roles in a far older script. A script designed not to harm you, but to shape you. It is here you begin to realize you were never born into the wrong family. You were born into the family that would awaken you, not because they were conscious, but because they weren't. Not because they offered wisdom, but because they couldn't. Not because they understood you, but because they didn't know how. Your soul chose to arrive where awareness was absent, so that presence could be born. You came through a lineage filled with shadows so you could learn how to recognize the light. You entered a family caught in cycles so you could be the one to break them. This is not destiny in the romantic sense. It is spiritual architecture, a design that uses contrast to reveal truth, suffering to reveal depth, and dysfunction to reveal the strength of the soul growing within it. Think about it. If your childhood had been peaceful, would you have sought inner peace so earnestly? If your family had been emotionally awake, would you have developed such sharp intuition? If your environment had been gentle, would your soul have learned resilience, empathy, and clarity? Awakening requires friction. Your family was the spark. And yet, even with this understanding, it is okay to grieve what you lost, to mourn the childhood you never received, to acknowledge the versions of love you desperately needed but never got. Healing does not dismiss the wound. It honors it. It sees it clearly. It forgives without forgetting. It frees without denying the impact. You can hold compassion for your family without carrying their pain anymore. You can understand their wounds without inheriting them. You can love them without allowing them to limit who you are becoming. Your awakening is the turning point, the moment where the unconscious lineage ends and consciousness begins, the moment where generations of silence break through your voice, the moment where patterns of fear dissolve under your awareness, the moment where you reclaim the life that was always meant to be yours. You are not a product of your family. You are the evolution of it. You are the next step in a lineage that didn't know how to grow. You are the one who sees what they couldn't, feels what they avoided, heals what they ignored. Though the path has been painful, it has brought you here to a place of clarity, depth, and inner truth that could only be forged through fire. So, take a breath. You survived what was meant to break you. You awakened where others remained asleep. You became conscious in a family built on unconsciousness, and now your life, your choices, your healing become the beginning of something entirely new. You are not bound by where you came from. You are liberated by the awareness you carry now. This is your becoming. This is your awakening. This is your freedom.